Revenge is the sweetest morsel to the mouth that ever was cooked in hell. Welcome back, guys. It's Motion Recaps again, and today we're covering the 2018 horror movie, Mandy. Spoilers ahead. Let's begin. Red is living a quiet life with his girlfriend, Mandy. They have a beautiful cottage near the place called Shadow Mountains. Their relationship is pure and full of love, but everything changes when a hippie cult named the Children of Dawn interferes in their life. A leader of the cult falls in love with Mandy, and with the help of a vicious biker gang, he breaks into Red's and Mandy's house. After Mandy declines the leader's offer to have sex with him, the cult burns her in front of Red. The cult then leaves, without knowing that Red managed to set himself free, and that he's ready to give them hell. Now before I go wrath or con on this recap, do me a favor and subscribe to this channel. Like this video as well if you enjoyed this recap thus far, and hit that bell icon to be notified of when we have another movie recap ready for you. After all, every time we get a new subscriber, an angel gets their wings. Okay, let's go ahead and start with this movie, Mandy. The year is 1983, and our protagonist, Red Miller, just finished with his work as a lumberjack. He heads home, where his girlfriend Mandy is waiting for him. The first act, named The Shadow Mountains, begins. Red came just in time to see Mandy's new piece of art. After spending some time together, they go to bed. They talk about their favorite planets, and we get to see a shot of the beautiful night sky. The next day, the couple spends a day on a gorgeous lake. Then Red has a nightmare of Mandy walking through the woods and finding a dead baby deer. It's like he feels that something bad will happen. He wakes up and he doesn't tell Mandy about the dream that he had. The next day, Mandy reads a book, and after that, she decides to go for a walk. A van with a bunch of weirdos passes her by, and one guy keeps staring at her. Then, we get the second act called The Children of the New Dawn. That's right, they're the creepy bunch from the van, and they're in a cult. Their leader, Jeremiah, is scolding one member, Mother Marlene. After he finishes giving her a lesson, he orders her to fetch Brother Swan. Brother Swan comes over. Jeremiah tells him about his obsession with Mandy and that he feels naked without her. They make a plan to kidnap her. Jeremiah then asks Brother Swan if he has a tooth of Abraxas, and Swan pulls out an ocarina, a stone whistle. They agree that they'll need to make a trade and offer one of their cult members in order to get what they want. The next day, we see Mandy working at a gas station. While she's reading a book, Marlene comes over with some groceries. Marlene starts some small talk, and she finds out where and with whom Mandy lives. The night falls, and Swan is in the van with Brother Hanker and Brother Klopek. He gets out of the van and uses the tooth of Abraxas. They wait for some time. Then four very menacingly looking things show up on bikes. One of them approaches Swan, and Swan gives him a jar of something. After taking a sip from the jar, the thing asks him about the sacrifice, but Swan tells him that they need to finish the job first. At that time, Red and Mandy are having dinner while watching the sci-fi movie. Red then goes out to smoke a cigarette, and he feels that something's way off. After the couple goes to sleep, we get to see the mysterious four watching their house from a distance. They break in and get Red and Mandy all bound up and knock them unconscious. Then, they take a cult member away into the night. Mandy wakes up tied to a chair. Marlene and a girl named Sister Lucy are with her. Marlene puts some eye drops into Mandy's eyes, and afterwards, she takes a huge wasp out of the jar and stings Mandy in the neck with it, all in order to drug her. Mandy begins feeling weird. Everything starts changing colors and slowing down for her. She's taken to another room, where Jeremiah and the others are. Jeremiah puts on a vinyl record with songs that he composed. His song is about how perfect he is, which obviously shows us his narcissistic nature. He tells Mandy about how God chose him specifically. He says that he's seen many women, but few were like her, and that she got his attention right away. She called out to him. Jeremiah then strips naked in front of her and tells her that she will have the honor of sleeping with him. Mandy starts laughing at his face, partly because of the story and partly because of how small he is as a person. Jeremiah gets upset and starts angrily masturbating, but she laughs even harder. Mandy crushed his ego. Jeremiah comes up to a mirror crying. He asks God what to do, but God is not answering. Jeremiah is all alone in this. He then approaches Red, who is all tied up with barbed wire, and begins insulting him and describing how worthless he is in an attempt to hide his jealousy. He calls Mandy a whore because she didn't want him. Jeremiah tells Red that he doesn't know what true love is. He pulls Lucy over, tells her to kneel, and puts one bullet into his gun. He spins the barrel, and he gives the gun to Lucy, and then he points her hand with the gun towards her head. Red sees hesitation in Lucy's eyes, but she pulls the trigger and survives. Jeremiah then tells Red that he and Mandy are just poor pigs without souls. He takes a dagger from Swan and stabs Red. Jeremiah informs him that Mandy will be cleansed by fire. Everyone from the cult gathers around. They bring Mandy in a sleeping bag. They attach her to the wooden construction and set her on fire. Red is watching with rage and despair in his eyes as Mandy's still moving, trying to break free. After she burns to ashes, the cult leaves. Red tries to break free after some struggling and butchering of his wrists on the barbed wire, and he manages to break free. Then he removes the barbed wire that is deeply stuck in his cheeks and walks up to the place where Mandy's remains are. There is still something left of her skull, but the wind blows it away. Red is devastated. He then goes into the house to check if it's damaged, and he finds his favorite shirt that Mandy bought him. He then lies down on the bed and falls asleep. He sees Mandy in his dream. However, when she turns around, her flesh starts decaying. That wakes him up, and he goes to the bathroom, where he takes a bottle of alcohol and drinks a bunch of it to disinfect the wounds in his cheeks. He also pours it all over his wounded hands and over his stab wound. He drinks some more and screams in pain and agony. His screams quickly turn into cries. The next day, Red visits his friend Carruthers, who kept his crossbow all this time. Red reunites with his old weapon, and then Carruthers gives him a few strong bolts that can penetrate through bone. Carruthers then asks Red what he's going to hunt, and Red has a breakdown while telling him everything that happened. After Carruthers hears this whole story, he tells Red about the 4 mysterious figures that broke into his house. It's revealed that they're a biker gang called the Black Skulls, notorious for murdering truckers and prostitutes. They were normal people once, but they were on bad terms with a guy who cooked LSD for them to use and distribute. The cook made a special batch that changed the biker gang completely. After Red gets back home, he starts forging himself a new weapon, a huge axe. Then we get into the third act, called Mandy. Red drives to a place where the Black Skulls were last seen. He pulls out his crossbow and he waits for them. After some time, they show up, and Red manages to take down one spiky guy. He gets down and into his car to drive over him. However, he hits something and crashes his car. Red loses consciousness and has a dream about Mandy. He wakes up with one hand tied and the other one nailed down. A gang member shows up and he beats Red up a little. He goes to take a knife, but when he gets back, Red manages to knock him out. Red then releases himself and goes to find the others. In one room, he finds a dead elderly couple. In another room, he finds another gang member who's watching porn and snorting coke. He notices Red and the two of them fight. After some time of ruthless fighting, Red slits his throat. Then he gets a surprise by the gang member whom he overpowered earlier. Red attacks him with a kitchen knife and quickly kills him. Red then collects his equipment back, and he finds the jar that Swan gave the bikers. He gives some a try and has a really bad trip. We see a hallucination of his face melting and some radio tower. After he goes outside, Red quickly finds the last gang member just standing next to Red's burning car. Red shoots the last remaining gang member with his crossbow, hitting him directly in the neck. The gang member takes the bolt out and blood gushes out. Red gets down to check the situation, and the gang member attacks him. The two of them begin to fight, and Red has the advantage by having his huge axe. The gang member starts playing dirty by insulting Mandy. Red loses it. He overpowers the gang member and chops off his head. Then, he finds a cigarette lying on the ground and lights it on the gang member's flaming severed head. He takes a four-wheeler and drives to the place from his drug-induced vision. There, Red finds the chemist who's making LSD. The chemist has a tiger named Lizzie for a pet, and he lets her out to see if Red is a good man. He gets assured that Red is not a threat to him when Lizzie just passes by. Red then tells the chemist what he's searching for, and the chemist tells him in which direction to go to find the children of the new dawn. Red heads out to find them, but his four-wheeler gets stuck in the mud. He continues on foot and eventually passes out. Once again, he dreams about Mandy, and this time she's taking a gem out of a dying monster's body. Red wakes up and continues walking. After some time, he finds the Church of the Children of the New Dawn. He sets a trap for Swan and Lucy, who are in the car. Once they stop, Red pulls Swan out and smashes his nose. Swan begins talking about how Mandy burned brightly. Red puts the pointy part of his axe into Swan's mouth and pushes it in deeper until Swan dies. He lets Lucy go and then heads out to find the rest of the children. Brother Hanker is polishing his car carefully. Suddenly, Red's axe comes flying, and it hits Hanker right in his head. Red then sneaks up on Klopek, who's carving something out of wood. Red takes a chainsaw and walks up to Klopek while trying to turn it on. To Red's surprise, Klopek takes out another, even longer chainsaw, and it's comically large. Red's chainsaw malfunctions. Klopek attacks him, and Red tries his best to defend himself with a chainsaw. Red parries a bunch of attacks and finally manages to turn on his chainsaw. He and Klopek have an intense fight, in which Red wins by using a chain and pulling Klopek on the chainsaw. Red then goes down into the church. After exploring around, he finds Marlene. She tries seducing Red by telling him that she's Jeremiah's favorite since she's so sensitive and gentle. She thinks that she knows how to make love better than anyone else. Red just looks at her. In the next scene, he walks into the room where Jeremiah is and throws Marlene's severed head onto Jeremiah's feet. Jeremiah tells Red that he's a worthless thing without a soul. However, when he sees that strategy won't work, he begs Red for mercy, but with no luck. Red squishes his head like some fruit. At the end, Red sets everything on fire. He then gets into Hanker's car. He reminisces about the moment he met Mandy. He starts hallucinating and he sees her in the car next to him. She can finally rest in peace. Red looks at her with a smile and continues driving. The movie ends with a view of trippy and colorful woods. And that's our recap of the movie Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage. By the way, what's your favorite Nick Cage movie? Let me know in the comments section below. Well, that's all I've got for you right now. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.